Hello everyone, it is August 2nd, 2020, and we have a lot to talk about. We have Tropical Storm Isaisis, and it weakened into a tropical storm, and over the past couple of days, it looked like it was really falling apart, but over the past 24 hours, it has really gotten its act back together. You can see these sort of edges right here, and you can see lots of convection going on right here, lots of thunderstorms, these shades of pink and white and even dark black, indicating that we are seeing some very strong thunderstorms firing up. And unlike yesterday, those thunderstorms have maintained their strength, indicating that this system is holding itself pretty well, fighting that shear just a little bit. Fortunately for the Florida coastline, most areas were spared because while this looks really menacing, the actual radar image showed most of the activity on the east side of the storm, so the Florida coastline really only saw just a few bands and a few gusty breezes, nothing really much at all. So that's good news for Florida, but regardless, I think the threat is now on the rise for South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, as this system starts to make its northwesterly and then eventually northeasterly turn. Things are looking pretty impressive. Now, if we look at the official NOAA track, this is the 8 p.m. advisory. It is moving north-northwest at 9 miles per hour, and it is officially a tropical storm. And again, I would not be surprised if this does go into or intensifies into a weak Cat 1 hurricane by tomorrow, as this is going to be going into a much more favorable environment, something I'll be discussing a little bit later. But as you can see, along the coastline, in the blue, we have tropical storm warnings, and in the yellow, we have tropical storm watches. Notice, though, on the South Carolina and North Carolina coast, sections are under a hurricane watch. And I think that's indicative that the National Weather Service also does agree that this could strengthen. There is a chance that this could strengthen into a hurricane. So they are basically having that possibility in place that this could strengthen into a weak Cat 1 hurricane before making landfall in southeastern North Carolina. And also, as you can see from this track, there's very good model consensus. You can see just how small the 3-day cone is. And as this system picks up speed, you can see that it's very likely going to make landfall somewhere in northeastern South Carolina or southwestern North Carolina, most likely southeastern North Carolina, and then continue northeastward into the Virginia Beach or Norfolk region, then go straight into New Jersey, and then eventually into Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. Now, if we go to the Ensemble Models, you can see this is the 0Z August 3rd, 2020 model track, and you can see that consensus is very strong. It looks increasingly likely that this system is going to make landfall somewhere in southeastern North Carolina, right around Myrtle Beach, and then go northeast, just west of Virginia Beach right here, and then go basically right through New Jersey and then into the western portion of Massachusetts. All right, and so it looks like impacts are going to be pretty significant, especially along I-95 and eastwards, where I think we could see some pretty significant impacts in terms of rain and wind. Now, here are the intensity charts. This is the 0Z intensity chart right here, and you can see that right now it does have winds at 60 knots sustained in the strongest part of the storm, which is the eastern side. And you can see that over the next 36 hours, it should maintain its strength, or 24 hours, it should maintain its strength, maybe even go into a Cat 1 category. But then after that, it should start to gradually decrease and then eventually rapidly decrease in strength. I think by 36 hours, you can see a lot of consensus is 50 to 60 knots. That's when it'll be right around North Carolina and Virginia. And then after that, it should weaken into more of a weak tropical storm. And then after that, it will go into depression status. Now, here are the latest aircraft observations. If you look at this chart right here, you can see that the actual pressure, the latest pressure observation was 995 millibars, so nothing really too strong. A typical Cat 1 hurricane is at 980 millibars, the weakest one. So again, nothing really too strong, but it is definitely not weakening, so that's a good sign. And if you look at the flight level wind, one part of the storm actually had wind gusts at 75 knots, so that is pretty impressive. A 10-second wind speed of 75 knots, so that indicates that the storm is gradually strengthening, actually, because the earlier recon from this afternoon had peak wind gusts at around 63, 65 knots, and that 10-knot jump is pretty significant, and it's definitely something that we need to pay attention to, and especially for tonight and tomorrow when the system does have a small window to strengthen. Now, here's the GFS. This is basically, on this model chart, I've basically just laid everything out to explain. So, number one, this system did not make landfall in Florida like some of the models were saying. And like I said earlier in my previous videos, I did not expect this to make landfall in Florida because of that sort of ridge and that trough setup right here, I did not expect it to go make landfall directly onto Florida, but rather skirt it, and that is what happened. Now, as the system goes and makes that northeastward turn, it is going to be over ocean water much longer than if it had made landfall in Florida. And keep in mind, right here is the Gulf Stream. And so the Gulf Stream is a warm current of water. So as it's over that water, it is going to be in pretty good conditions to have that source of fuel really start to strengthen that system. Now, one other thing is the wind shear that we've seen over the past 2 days has really prevented the storm from strengthening and is actually what caused the weakening from the Cat 1 to tropical storm. And that is because you had these winds coming in from the west or southwest, and that storm was moving in the northwesterly direction. So you had that perpendicular wind flow, and that is not good for a tropical system. That the vertical axis of that tropical system was tilted, and because of that, you had that convection building, and then after about a few hours or so, that convection would collapse back down into the system because that vertical axis was not fully aligned. And so what's going on is you have your low-level center somewhere right around here, but your mid-level center is about 20, 30 miles northeast. Until those can fully align, you're not really going to see much strengthening. And it's trying to align. It is making progress and becoming vertically aligned completely. We just don't know if that will fully happen. If that does, then we will see some strengthening. And there definitely is the potential. This is the big trough right here, this unusually strong trough that we're seeing for August. And that is what's going to really just carry the system northeast. And then you have that big Bermuda Ridge right here. So it really has no choice. It can't go too far west. It can't go out to sea because of that ridge. So it's going to basically straddle along the coastline, go slightly inland, get picked up by this trough, and then skirt out to the east. Now, one thing I want to point out is, see this big black circle? So that what I've circled there is the jet streak. This is the 250 millibar wind streamlines, and as you can see, that jet streak right here is really going to help to strengthen the system. You have those stronger winds coming in from the west, going northwest or northeastward, and that's really going to help give the system a bit more power and a bit more lift, especially on the northwestern side. And now, one thing I also want to say is that because of this trough, this system will have basically the rain shield of the system is going to flip to the northwesterly side or the northwestern side, which is right around here. Usually with tropical systems, you have the strongest rain and wind on the easterly side once it starts interacting with land because all that dry air is pulled into the system from the west. But unlike those times, this strong trough in the west is going to really fuel the western side of that storm as you have those cooler temperature anomalies from the west sort of interacting with that tropical system. That's really going to help to instigate some very heavy rainfall, especially along the I-95 corridor in cities like Raleigh, Richmond, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, even Boston. Maybe you could see some really heavy rainfall with this system because of that trough right here swinging through. Now here's the NAM 3-kilometer total rainfall. You can see it has a thin band of about 50 miles, 50 miles horizontally, a very heavy rainfall. This band, this purple band right here you see is about 3 to 6 inches of rain in spots. And so there is also good model consensus that this area right here will see about 3 to 6 inches of rain in a very short span of about 9 hours. And so flash flooding is a pretty good threat. If you look at the GFS, it shows about the exact same thing. 3 to 6 inches of rain, maybe a little bit less, basically along I-95 and east and points east and west for about 25 to 30 miles. Now, here's the National Weather Service flash flooding risk over the next 3 days. As you can see, a broad area is in the 20% moderate risk. And while this 20% might not seem high, for flash flooding, this is a very unusually high risk for the Mid-Atlantic region. And this is indicative of the very high potential for flash flooding in spots as this system goes through, providing very heavy rainfall rates in a matter of just a few hours. So we could really see some flash flooding events, especially in central Virginia, central North Carolina, and northeastern South Carolina, where we really could see some very heavy banding and some problems arising from this. Now here is the storm surge graphic, and with this system having those winds and it's the concave coast in many spots, the storm surge is going to be a pretty serious problem. All the way from Florida, 1 to 3 feet of storm surge, but then in northeastern South Carolina and southwestern North Carolina, about 2 to 4 feet of storm surge right here. Let me switch my tools real quick. Yeah, about 2 to 4 feet of storm surge in this area right here, and then again 1 to 3 feet here. I do think there is potential for storm surge to be greater in the Chesapeake Bay region, essentially this area right here, as those winds really funnel in. I think we're going to see maybe 2 to 4 feet of storm surge in the central Chesapeake Bay region, while other areas see 1 to 3 feet down until 2 to 4 feet in this region right here. Now for winds, winds are where the certainty is a bit lower. So if Isaisis can strengthen back into a Cat 1 hurricane, this system will have sustained winds about 60 knots by the time it reaches central Virginia. If not, it will have sustained winds about 50, 55 knots. So again, there's pretty good consensus that the strongest winds will be in this region right here, in the southeastern portion of Virginia. And it looks like there will be a very sharp cutoff basically west of I-95 where you won't see much wind at all. I think I made a graph earlier. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, right here. Okay, I'll get back to that. So there'll be a sharp cutoff essentially west of I-95 where you really won't see that many winds or that much strong wind gusts. I think mostly in southeastern Virginia, you do have the potential to see wind gusts 60, maybe even 70 miles per hour in spots, especially in Newport News, Norfolk, and Hampton Roads. Now here is the GFS, I think. Yep, GFS. The GFS has its winds a bit too far to the east, I feel like. So I think it is right in its strength, but I do think this wind field is a bit too far to the east. But again, kind of similar. I think the strongest winds will be focused in southeastern Virginia. And finally, here is the NAM model. And I think, oh, my bad, this was the European. Here's the NAM. And the NAM is actually the most aggressive in winds in central Virginia, showing winds 50 to 60 miles per hour. And I would not rule this out. I think it is certainly possible with those heavy banding thunderstorms that we do see wind gusts 50, maybe even 60 miles per hour in central Virginia. But again, the NAM also agrees with the GFS in the European that about 30 miles west of I-95, you really won't be seeing that many winds or that much strong winds or heavy wind gusts. And again, the strongest winds focused in the Chesapeake Bay and the Hampton Roads and Virginia Beach area. Now here's the GFS model. I just use this as a map to show where I think the strongest winds are going to be. And basically, if you're east of this black line, you will see some pretty significant wind damage, or not wind damage, but very high, strong wind gusts, 60, maybe even 70 miles per hour in spots. But basically west of this black line, almost nothing, nada, 30 mile per hour wind gusts max. And that just shows the sharp gradient with the storm. While areas west of this line might see very heavy rain, you really won't be seeing much in terms of very heavy rainfall. So that is one major thing with the system. One area will see predominantly heavy rain. One area will see predominantly very heavy winds. And now as we transition to my summary, again, I think Isaisis could strengthen into a Category 1 hurricane before making landfall in extreme southeastern North Carolina. I think conditions are a bit more favorable once it makes that northeasterly turn because winds will be coming out from the southwest. Its direction will be going to the northeast, so you have that parallel wind flow, better opportunity for it to strengthen. And some of the recent model runs, the 18Z and 0Z NAM HURF model, or the hurricane model specifically designated for these type of systems, do show a stronger system. Pressures reaching 990, maybe even 985 millibars before making landfall. That is a weak Cat 1 hurricane. So that is definitely something to watch. I think it is definitely possible we see a weak Cat 1 hurricane before making landfall. It might not happen. We might just have a strong tropical storm. But keep in mind, if that weak Cat 1 hurricane does indeed verify, we will see slightly stronger wind gusts along and east of I-95. Number 2, the strongest winds will be east and along of I-95, up to 70 miles per hour in the Chesapeake Bay area and isolated spots east of I-95. So again, the strongest wind gusts will be basically in northeastern South Carolina, or basically the eastern third of Virginia, North Carolina, and the eastern fifth of South Carolina. The heaviest rains will be along I-95 and about 25 miles in either direction, east and west. 3 to 5 inches of very heavy banding rain, and I think that will have the potential for some serious flooding issues in spots. Number 4, coastal areas will see lower flood risk but more wind threat. So the actual rainfall in these coastal areas will actually be relatively low. if you see right here, only about 1 to 2 inches in this blue shading right here, while this purple area, which may not see that much wind, will see a lot of heavy rain. Inland areas along I-95 will see a high flood threat. And finally, for Central Virginia and Richmond, Virginia areas, for people who are viewing this video from those areas, I think gusts are possible from 50 to 60 miles per hour, and 3 to 5 inches of rain are a good bet. So flash flooding is likely in spots, and I would not rule out some power outages and some wind damage too. So that's it for this video, guys. I'll probably have one final update tomorrow evening. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, got some clarity from this, and I'll see you next time.